Dr. Devi Shetty, Director Professor Raghuram, Deans, faculty, and staff of IIM Bangalore, Mr. Rajamanar, Mr. Vaidyanathan, Mr. Mustafa, ladies and gentlemen. ನಿಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನನ್ನ ಹಾರ್ದಿಕ ಅಭಿನಂದನೆಗಳು. ಹಾಗೂ ಇವತ್ತು ನೀವು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರುವ ಸನ್ಮಾನಕ್ಕೆ ನನಗೆ ಹೃತಪೂರ್ವಕ ವಂದನೆಗಳು. ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. I was trying to be erudite. I'm honored to be here today in front of such an august audience to deliver the 45th Foundation Day lecture of my beloved alma mater, IIM Bangalore. It is a double honor because I'm told that I'm the first woman to be asked to deliver this lecture. I remember the last time I was here, 5 years ago, to receive the Distinguished Alumni Award in the presence of the late Professor U.R. Ananthamurthy and my beloved mother, Leela Ramanathan, who is also no longer with us. Dr. Devi Shetty is one of my heroes, and I'm so glad he is here. I keep telling my son, who is a doctor, that I want him to be just like Dr. Shetty when he grows up. I always quote him to my students as a rare example of a medico-entrepreneur who not only heals, but has the vision to create a sustainable healthcare model which benefits mankind. Thank you. I'm not a great orator like Professor Ananthamurthy, so please bear with me when I share some of my thoughts on the subject of true empowerment based on my experiences as an entrepreneur, a corporate leader, as a mother, a teacher, and as a woman over the last 36 years. I was very intrigued by this word empowerment, a current buzzword trending on social media and used extensively in corporate and government circles, and of course, on the cocktail circuit. As someone in the social sector very cynically remarked, it needs to be thrown in to ensure old programs get new funding. In fact, I believe it is one of the 10,000 most used words in the English language the world over. If everybody is being empowered, I asked myself, from women to children to organizational employees to the physically challenged to the economically disadvantaged, then why is nothing really changing? Who have all these grandiose schemes and ideas really benefited? If we were really empowering all these people, why has Me Too become a tsunami? Why are there so many rapes of women and children in our country? Why are the physically, economically, and sexually disadvantaged still fighting for their rights? Is this really empowerment? My submission is that there has been no true empowerment because we have not understood the concept itself, what it really means and implies, let alone implementing it successfully. I went back to the oft-neglected dictionary, online of course, to understand the true meaning of the term empowerment. It actually means having qualities that give a person or group of people the means to take more control of their lives and become stronger and more independent. Empowerment is multidimensional and is a sociological, psychological, and economic process, not a single one-time action. It can occur at an individual, group, or community level and helps people gain control over their own lives, in their communities, and in their societal structure by acting on issues that they deem important. True empowerment needs change from inside, not just lip service and smart media bytes. It has to work at several levels: personal, familial, societal, and organizational, if it has to be really transformational. True empowerment of the spirit is what kindles a fire of self-confidence, courage of your convictions, the resilience to face failure, and the determination to get up and keep going. Empowerment has also to be supported by knowledge, the absence of fear, and a clear direction. It is a painful and long-drawn process and needs willing participants on both sides, those who empower and those who are being empowered. If not, it becomes one of those warm, fuzzy terms which gets bandied around and does more harm than good. So to use a sports analogy, it is like exchanging the baton in a relay race. You need to hand over your power over people's lives to them, and they need to accept this power that is being given to them. This raised a lot of interesting questions in my head. Do empowerers, or those who wield control, really hand over power to their empowerees? Can they? Are they secure enough within themselves to hand over power to, say, women, children, employees, or students? Do they have the magnanimity of spirit to do this? For true empowerment, the inherent power equations that we live with need to change. Power cannot be treated as a commodity or a structure which is unchanging and unchangeable. It cannot be about domination and control. The feeling of power stokes one's ego. So giving it away to someone else is diminishing oneself in a sense. And how many of us can really do that? How many of us can step back after empowering someone else, especially when one is not sure what the outcome or the consequences are going to be? This raised another interesting question in my mind, and pardon me for being politically incorrect here. Are the people we want to empower ready to take on this mantle? Because with empowerment comes great responsibility, accountability for your own actions, and the frightening fact that you can no longer blame anyone else for your lot in life. Not your parents, not your teachers, not your friends, not your manager, not even the Bangalore traffic. Because the buck stops squarely with you. Of course, you can continue to blame God. He has broad enough shoulders. I have found a number of people, I'm not saying all, who do not want to be masters of their own destiny, but prefer to live in their comfort zones, however constraining, and keep complaining about the government, their fate in life, and how nothing is possible. Having established the context for true empowerment, let me talk about what holds people back from making the final leap towards this utopia, and what we need to do as leaders, educators, and parents to bridge this gap. The first step is to eliminate fear. The second is to provide a safety blanket of unconditional and non-judgmental physical and emotional support. And the third is to enrich the mind of the empoweree with the knowledge required for self-discovery and self-support. I strongly believe that true empowerment requires the empoweree to take control of the process and drive it if it has to be transformational and sustainable. Let me first talk about fear. Fear is unpleasant and is triggered by the perception of danger, real or imagined. As Will Smith, the famous actor, says in the trailer of his forthcoming movie, After Earth, fear is not real. It is a product of thoughts you create. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. And it is this perceived fear that I believe holds a lot of us back from being truly empowered or empowering others. Irrational or perceived fear is extremely personal and can be very real to some people, while others are able to shrug it off and get on with life. And fear is the reason so many women in this country waited decades before they outed their persecutors. For an alpha female like me, it seemed very strange that these poor women had kept quiet for so long, and more importantly, continued working in the same place. Being brought up in an army household by a brigadier father and a commander-in-chief mother, I was always encouraged, in fact, made to face situations and never be frightened of confronting something which was unpleasant. As my parents always told me, if you ignore a problem, it does not go away. So face it and find a solution before it bites you in the wrong place. But as I read the various posts and interviews women had shared, I realized that it was fear that held them back. Obviously, the economic fear of losing one's job was paramount, but if you scratched below the surface, it was a fear of being shamed, the fear of being laughed at, the fear of having parents who hadn't want them to work in the first place, saying, "I told you so." And in today's world of social media, being seen as a troublemaker and, in quotes, uncool. And I really believe this is what kept women quiet until Malcolm Gladwell's tipping point was reached, and they realized they were not alone in their struggle. The anonymity of social media and the power of the collective has given these women a sense of pseudo-empowerment, perhaps. And I say pseudo-empowerment deliberately. While I'm very glad that Me Too has given women a voice, unless it results in stringent universal norms across industries of acceptable behavior and definition of boundaries that cannot be crossed by men or women, backed by strong legal support and enforcement mechanisms, Me Too is not going to result in what I define as true empowerment or bring justice to the poor women concerned. There is a very real danger, and I want us all to be aware of this, that Me Too will get buried in the boys' club or the official bureaucracy of posh committees which exist in all large organizations. I would also like to propose the He Too movement for young men seeking fame and fortune, especially in the media and entertainment business. They are equally vulnerable to these same predators, many of whom, believe me, swing both ways. Sorry for digressing, but this is going to be a very real problem too. Coming back to my earlier train of thought, what do we need to truly empower not just women, but men too? Let us start with parents and the way they bring up their children, particularly their daughters. How can a young girl or boy develop, particularly a girl, develop into a strong, independent, spirited human being when she's constantly being told how she's inferior to her brother and restricted in everything she does and says because of the fear of the ubiquitous they and what they will say? I am fascinated by they, and I have been trying to find them since I was 19 and was told by a nasty aunt of mine that they would be very annoyed with my family because we refused to do any rituals when my father died, and that my father's spirit would hover around us. And I remember my 19-year-old self telling her in all seriousness, "Isn't that a good thing, Auntie? He loved us and is a good spirit to have around. He will continue to look after us." She didn't speak to me ever again, thank God. But like the Knights of the Templar, I went in search of this holy grail they. They who were omnipresent, who are opinionated, but invisible. And I'm very sorry to say that my quest has ended in absolute failure. And I soon realized that they are mythical beasts who don't feed you, but just criticize you and lay down obiter dicta. They and fear are like the concept of bhava and rasa in Indian dance. One feeds on the other. They are mutually dependent and parasitic in a sense, especially in our country, where parents, in their desire to be not unpopular with their children, but still keep them obedient, use the they factor so liberally that it has become a living, breathing entity. I agree, some fear is good, gets the juices pumping. But if it paralyzes you, so you don't experiment, don't experience new things, then you have a serious problem. You're actually living a half-life. To those who are parents in this room, I say, have the courage of your convictions and a point of view. Think about what you believe is right and wrong, and have the courage to abandon those shibboleths which are no longer relevant, retaining only those values which are good, enduring, and progressive. And to use another buzzword, sustainable. You owe that to your children. As the Dalai Lama said, give the ones you love wings to fly, roots to come back to, and reasons to stay. And I strongly believe that is our duty as a parent. Coming to power, there is a common saying that you cannot be given power, you have to take it. You may be given a designation and the authority to take decisions, but how many people want to actually take the responsibility that comes with real empowerment or are even allowed to? And it is my personal belief, based on 36 years of corporate experience, that this malaise of fear is affecting most large corporations. They are breeding managers who are adept at passing the buck either upwards or downwards, so that if anything goes wrong, they're not held responsible. So in spite of all the matrix structures that are in place, the buck nowadays goes straight to the top. And that is why the organizational pyramid is actually becoming more and more scalene instead of broad-based. We seem to be actually, Dr. Shetty, asking for a bot takeover. Such a contrast to when I started my career in HMT, where in spite of being a public sector undertaking, I was encouraged to take my own decisions and stand by them. This brings me to my second point in the empowerment process. If we want to truly empower the people in our lives, we need to provide them with a safety trampoline which they can both jump on and land on. The trampoline being a physical metaphor for the emotional and physical support, the feeling of security, and the push that people need to embark on this transformational journey of empowerment. The reason most kids don't come to their parents when they fail is because of the 4 magic words, "I told you so." Haven't we all used it? How will they learn if they don't fall? Didn't we? And shouldn't our love for them be bigger than our egos of proving we are right? Why do so many women continue in abusive relationships and in jobs where they're being harassed? And I'm not talking only about the poor, disadvantaged women here. I'm talking about the rich and beautiful as well. They simply have nowhere to go and no one to support them. I'm one of the blessed ones. My mother, who was a widow, didn't even think about it. When I said I wanted an out from my marriage, she just said, come home. Do you need to even ask? This is your home, and I will help you bring up your son. This was 30 years ago when divorce and single parenthood were pretty uncommon. But she gave me, and I will always thank her for this, the courage to explore without painting a rosy picture of the future, the courage to be me, and the emotional support I needed to keep going. And we weathered all the storms, physical, emotional, and financial, together. That, according to me, is the true empowerment of the spirit that we need to give our children, our women, and all the people who depend on us. The third thing we need to do is give them the gift of knowledge. In my experience, I believe knowledge, true knowledge that is the most potent tool to destroy fear. Knowledge that frees the mind of fear and enriches it. Knowledge that helps us explore the unknown, dispels myths and shibboleths, and gives us the power to control, if not command, a situation. Knowledge is truly power. In Plutarch's words, the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled. The fire of self-confidence, the courage of your convictions, the spirit of resilience, acceptance of failure, and the determination to get up and keep going. As my late father used to say, I'm beginning to quote my parents more and more as I get older for some strange reason, but as my late father used to say, c'est la vie and que sera sera. What will be, whenever we went to him saying that we had failed or hadn't done well at something or the other. An empowered spirit needs to be fueled by the knowledge of life, experience, inspiration, and learning. And I'm a strong believer in education. I get extremely upset when I hear peers and friends decrying our educational system and telling young people that a college degree or an MBA or a medical degree don't matter. Yes, there are problems with our educational system. So let's fix them, instead of decrying it to an impressionable younger generation who are so confused with their life choices already. Particularly when a lot of us are here because of our education, which was also virtually free by today's standards. Confucius very rightly said, I hear, I forget, I see, I remember, I do, I understand. So on a lighter note, I have redefined the job description of a teacher as a stand-up edutainer who is Google+. I'm sure my friends in academia will either agree or violently disagree. Easier said than done, and extremely frightening for all of us, teachers, parents, and managers, who have been brought up on the principle that when I open my lips, let no dog bark. In this world of digital technology, you are opening yourself to a whole new world, where suddenly, from being God of all you survey, you are a learner too, open to questioning and criticism. And I believe it is this vulnerability and our own egos which hold a lot of us back from truly empowering those who come into our circle of influence. As parents, educators, and managers, it is our duty to keep asking oneself, am I current? Or am I resting on my past laurels professionally and personally? Do I have the courage to leave my own comfort zone and explore this new world? Start relearning everything I know so I can be a better guide to the people whom I can influence. Which brings me back to my original thought that you can only empower others if you are constantly willing to learn, adapt, and keep learning. Parenting and teaching in today's world of digital media, overpopulation, religious bigotry, and corruption is not easy at all. How do you teach a young one to be honest and truthful and respectful when all around wrongdoers are seemingly prospering? When being smart and sneaky and getting away with it is considered cool? When drugs, alcohol, and promiscuity are badges of cooldom that people flaunt? When you can actually get away with murder if you have enough money and connections? A veritable minefield which shakes even my faith at this age. So what can one do? I believe that the only possible thing we can do is to empower our children and students with the right values, beliefs, and attitudes, and the discernment to know the difference between right and wrong. We also need to be their role models by walking the talk ourselves. Do as I say and not as I do no longer holds water with this generation. In a world of instant gratification and instant inspiration, can the demand for instant knowledge be far behind? As parents and educators, how do we enrich minds instantly? Is it even possible? I don't think so. But what we can and should do is provide our charges with an environment conducive to learning, starting at home, give them the tools to explore on their own with the necessary guidance so that they achieve definite learning goals. After all, we become such a result-oriented and transactional society that open-minded things don't work anymore. How else can we eliminate this miasma of fear from people who depend on us and help them fly? Firstly, by being unafraid of failure ourselves, in fact, celebrating it and talking about it openly without being frightened about denting our ego or what they will say. This is the only way to build a culture of openness where people can fail without being ostracized and are encouraged to keep going. Secondly, by helping them to face their fears head on. I'm a cancer survivor, currently in remission. When I was diagnosed during a routine check in 2015, I was overwhelmed. But after a couple of days of wallowing in self-pity and casting a pall of gloom and doom over everyone around me, I realized I was not cut out to be a tragic heroine or a drama queen. I realized that I needed to face the problem squarely and come to terms with it. I thought about the worst that could happen to me, which was dying. And since I've never been frightened of death, that wasn't the real problem bothering me. My real concern was that my beloved son needed to be secure financially, so I focused on that, got my affairs in order, something which we keep putting off. Cancer is a very boring disease, believe me. The treatment keeps going on and on and on. So I decided to manage it myself. After all, it was only my breast and not my brain that was affected. So I went back to PERT and CPM that I learned in my first year here, and I broke down what seemed an insurmountable problem into digestible chunks that could be managed unemotionally. And in the supervision of my own treatment, supported, of course, by family and friends and staff, I kept my mind occupied. Trained the staff at HCG to be more productive. They didn't pay me for it, unfortunately, and didn't miss a single day of work. I found that once you articulate your fears and bring out all the bogies from your mind's closet, problems don't seem so impossible to tackle. Of course, I was also blessed by my insurance company picking up the entire tab. Next, you need to give your empowerees the knowledge which will help them find their own solutions to problems in their lives and communities. As the Buddha said, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. But first, start with you, your own self-knowledge and self-discovery, which gives you the self-confidence and inner security needed to let people you influence explore, question, experience, expand their horizons, and perhaps in the process, outgrow you. You need to accept this role change from fount of wisdom to a mentor or a guide who becomes part of the furniture, so to speak, and is there to listen and provide a non-judgmental safety net when things go wrong, which they're bound to. A safe haven where those you are empowering can lick their wounds, dust their knees, and get going again. The final step, which is most difficult, is to step back and let the bird soar. No ego, no envy, just the simple pride and joy of truly empowering another human being. Someone who wants to take the baton and run with all the risks and pitfalls and dangers of falling, and who is not satisfied with lip service empowerment, which cloaks mental laziness, lethargy, and an attitude of anything for a quiet life. Or as we say in this part of the world, we are like that only, solpa e just muddy. I end by quoting Rabindranath Tagore. May he pardon me wherever he is for the liberties I'm taking with his script. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that haven of true empowerment, let us all awake. Namaskara. Thank you.